Extensions galore and Broncos' new ownership. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another episode of the Locked On NFL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Monday, so that means you have me again, Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. And thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day, whether that's in video or audio form. We're free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online, as we covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. And we're back here with a Monday edition, and we have a ton to talk about today. It seemed like last week was the extension galore aspect of the offseason, with multiple big-time extensions being handed down. Hunter Renfrow of the Las Vegas Raiders, the Los Angeles Rams making some moves as well with Aaron Donald. That was a big one. Cooper Kupp as well, another big one. So we'll be talking about those in the first and second parts of the show. In the first part, we'll talk with your boy Q of Locked On Raiders about Hunter Renfrow. Then in the second part, I'll go solo, and I'll be talking about Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and that Los Angeles Rams team, and just what their strategy has been about trading away draft picks and just how they're able to get these guys, all these talented guys, under contract. Then in the final segment, we'll be talking with Sayre Bedinger of Locked On Broncos about the Broncos' new ownership, and that's an exciting part of their franchise, a big aspect for them, and a big change for them. So we'll talk with Sayre about that in the final segment. But without any further ado, let's dive into the first segment, the first interview here with your boy Q of Locked On Raiders, talking about Hunter Renfrow. Starting off our extension talk here today, it's your boy Q of Locked On Raiders. And Q, the Raiders love staying in the news. I know we talked a couple weeks ago. We're talking here again today, but this time about a Hunter Renfrow extension. How you doing?
I'm good, man. And yeah, I just think that they keep keeping it in the news so we can keep having shows together. You know what I mean? So we can keep jumping on and talking some Raider football, some NFL in general. And so it's always something that I have a lot of fun with. So yeah, man, happy to be back with you. And yeah, the Hunter Renfrow news came down Friday, afternoon. And it was a big deal, man. A big deal right there for the Raiders.
Yeah, and 2 for 32, Q, with $21 million guaranteed. How do you feel about the money for him? Because he's a player that's really important to this Raider team, coming off his first 100 catch season, 1,000-yard season. How do you feel about the money the Raiders ended up giving him?
You know, I thought that the Raiders really got a really good deal. I mean, you look at what the wide receivers have been going for so far throughout free agency, right? I mean, you've seen these guys get some monstrous deals led off by Christian Kirk in Jacksonville, which is just some stupid money, which, look, I'm not mad at any player that goes and gets money that I think is way too much than they're worth. But I thought Christian Kirk got way too much money than what his worth was, his value was. But with that being said, go get it. I thought Hunter Renfrow was going to end up really demanding a lot of money, and I think that the Raiders really did a good job of, I mean, again, 2 years, $32 million, $21 million guaranteed, but he has 1 year left on his deal. He was going into the final year of his deal anyway. So really it boils down to like 3 years at a base of like $11 million, which is a really good value for a slot receiver. When you think about who's going to be calling all the shots in Las Vegas, that's Josh McDaniels. Go back and look at his history with what he's done with slot receivers. Obviously, they're very important in his offense. So Hunter Renfrow, coming off the best season of his career, showing his value a year ago, could have probably said, no, I think I need a little bit more, but instead settled for a 2-year contract extension, giving him total 3 years and giving him another opportunity to play that role, be a really big-time playmaker, and even cash in again. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. Good money for a former 5th-round pick. I mean, it's not like he hit the big contract when he signed originally his rookie deal. He's a 5th-rounder. So that's a big pay raise for him, and also gives him another opportunity to get a bigger pay raise a little bit further down the line.
And you mentioned the fact that he was a 5th-round pick, came into the league in 2019. Q, did you imagine we'd be having this conversation when he first came in the league in 2019? How have you seen him grow as a player since he first came in the league and what he's able to do now for this Raider offense?
You know, I liked him a lot when he came into the league because I saw what he did at Clemson. I saw what he was able to do with Deshaun Watson and be Deshaun Watson's go-to guy. And I'm a guy who pulls for Alabama football at all times. And I remember that championship game and Deshaun Watson, that the winning touchdown went to Hunter Renfrow. Like, it was the guy that, hey, you need a big catch. Who are you going to go to? So I was first introduced to 3rd and Renfrow in that game and in that season, right? And then, doing a little bit of research, everyone's like, hey, man, this guy, that's what he does. He's not the most athletic. He's not the biggest. He's not the fastest, but he knows how to get open. He knows how to sit down in defenses and make himself available for the quarterback. So I always thought that he was going to be a good player for Derek Carr. I didn't realize how good he was going to be until last season when Darren Waller went down, and you realize, hey, the only weapon they really truly have is Hunter Renfrow, and defenses knew that too, but they still couldn't stop him, right? He still found ways to get open and get multiple catches and go over 1,000 yards and have over 100 catches and, find a way to will the Raiders to the playoffs. Even though they lost to Cincinnati, it was still, you kind of saw what this guy's capability were. And then you fast forward and you see that Josh McDaniels takes over as the head coach, and immediately you think, whoa, this could be the making of something special, because he's done some special things with some slot receivers, and Hunter Renfrow is a special receiver.
Yeah, and the Carr Renfrow connection not going anywhere for a couple of years in Las Vegas. But Q, let's talk about that Raider passing offense right now, because obviously the huge addition of Davante Adams. You mentioned Darren Waller in there as well. Yep. How are you feeling about the passing offense for 2022 and even beyond, knowing that Renfrow's now in Las Vegas for a couple more years?
I think it has a chance to be nasty. I mean, really, it has the chance to be one of the best in the league. I mean, you look at that three-headed monster: Darren Waller, Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow. Darren Waller's never been a Raider when he didn't have the most attention. The defense has always paid attention to him because Darren Waller's Darren Waller. Davante Adams has never been in the league where he didn't have the most attention, right? In Green Bay, everyone knew he was getting the ball. So all of a sudden, you free up both of those guys. And by the way, you throw in Hunter Renfrow, who at a point last season was the only guy and still found ways to get open. I mean, with Derek Carr, we talk about him quite a bit. Raider Nation talks about him quite a bit. There's always the controversy. Is he or isn't he the guy? There's really no excuse. There's no excuse for not having success when you have those kind of weapons. And I know that the offensive line may be a little shaky, but Cincinnati's offensive line was shaky a year ago, and they ended up in the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not saying the Raiders are going to end up in the Super Bowl. I'm just saying they have an opportunity to be a real special offense. By the way, Josh Jacobs has never ran the rock where he didn't have a loaded box, right? I mean, he's like, everything opens up. But it's one thing opens up something else. So if you all of a sudden have to pay attention to Davante, Darren, and Hunter, you can't load the box up. So now Josh Jacobs says, hey, I got one-on-one opportunities. All I got to do is get in the hole, make one guy miss, and I got an opportunity for a big play. I just think that the offense has a chance to be great. Now, they got to put it all together. So we just saw mandatory minicamp get wrapped up. You never know what happens with injuries and whatnot. But, I mean, on paper right now in June, it looks like it could be one of the better offenses in the league.
Yeah, and what I always say, Q, and you make a great point, because the run game feeds off of the pass game. The pass game feeds off of the run game. You're exactly right. Everything opens up something else within an offense. And I think especially with Carr and Renfrow having that connection already established and how it has grown over the past couple seasons, I mean, it's something that can be really dangerous, contributing to now having a Davante Adams and already having Darren Waller there. But Q, what have you seen from that Carr-Renfrow connection and how that has grown over the last 3 seasons?
I mean, you just see them getting comfortable with each other. I was at Hunter Renfrow's first game where he scored a touchdown. It was against the Houston Texans, and it was his rookie year, and the Raiders weren't playing very good ball, and they lost that game, as a matter of fact. But Hunter Renfrow caught the ball, made a little spin move, and took it to the house and really shocked everybody with his breakaway speed. It's like, wait, hold on. Where did that guy get that breakaway speed? He's not supposed to be that guy. But you saw then that Derek Carr trusted him and realized that Hunter Renfrow is going to make the right play. And that's what you've seen. And I think that's the biggest key. What you've seen from him over the years is that trust between Carr and him continue to grow. Renfro's going to be where he needs to be. Renfro's going to catch the ball. He very rarely puts it on the ground. He's going to catch the ball, and then he's going to make a play. He's going to fall forward. He'll catch the ball, and he's going to get a couple yards afterwards, if not more. He's just very, I hate to say fundamental because it makes him sound like he's not very athletic, but he's very smart. He's a strategic football player. He's very good at what he does, and he's a really good security blanket for Derek Carr. And now you add Davante Adams with the big playability. Darren Waller has a big playability. I mean, the sky is the limit for this offense. Again, they've got to get on the same page. I think that they're doing that a lot right now. You saw them a little bit in mandatory minicamp, all working together, and kind of saw what, kind of liked what you saw. But it's going to be interesting, man, once they put this whole thing together. Once training camp goes and you see a little bit in preseason, not from those guys, but just from the team in general, start to get an idea of what it could possibly be. But, yeah, Carr and Renfrow, that connection has just grown and grown and grown over the years.
Yeah, and Renfrow, as you talked about, Q, grown as a player too. But what are some of his strengths, and how can he even improve and get better on what he's done over the past couple of years here?
I think that his one area that he's going to continue to grow in and concentrate on, I think this is something he said to the media just the other day, was this new regime has taught him that, sometimes he'll make a second and third and fourth move. Sometimes that fourth move isn't needed, right? Sometimes he's doing too many jukes, because he's a guy that'll find a way to get open. His route is never exactly what you think it's going to be. I mean, he's just very shifty with his footwork, but I think that they're going to help continue to clean up his footwork. Sometimes he gets a little loose and he'll do, like I said, an extra move that might not be necessary. So instead of, going the extra route to try to make the extra juke move, just know that you already got your guy beat. Sit down, get the play, make the play happen so it doesn't take as long to develop. So I think that's how you'll see Hunter Renfrow continue to grow, just be a little bit more, like just tighter with his movements. I think that's the best way to look at it. And if he does that, especially with less attention being put on him with everyone else around him, I think that just makes his game that much better.
Yeah, and okay, we talked a lot about the AFC West a couple weeks ago. And we talked, I think that division, the potential to be one of the best in football. And again, the Raiders certainly making the moves to be competitive within that division that now has Russell Wilson and a bunch of other playmakers in it as well. Thanks so much for hopping on here with me today, Q.
Anytime, man. Maybe the Raiders will make another move. Waller, he's up next. What are they going to do with his contract? Are they going to extend him? If they do, I'm sure we'll be talking again. So I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Q. I really do think that the AFC West is going to be one of the best divisions in football, whether it is teams like the Raiders or the Broncos or obviously the Chiefs or the Chargers. I feel like all of them have positioned themselves very nicely to make a run at that division crown. And Hunter Renfrow, a big part of that Raider offense and a big extension to get done for Las Vegas. But we'll head into our first break here on Locked On NFL. Still a ton to talk about. When we get back, we'll be diving into the Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp extensions for the Los Angeles Rams and talking about their strategy in terms of big money contracts, trading picks for stars, and more. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Still a ton to talk about here on Locked On NFL. First, I do want to tell you a bit about Blue Nile and whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment. Find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that you choose a diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style, and Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft the perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind, and if you're looking for fine jewelry, but you're having trouble choosing, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, and they're available via phone or from chat, also to help you find a memorable gift at any budget. So make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off of purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement, so use code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, shipped free, and arrives in discreet packaging. Then we'll give away what's inside, so shop stress-free and find your forever peace. Go to BlueNile.com today. And we're back here with our second segment of Locked On NFL. Kevin Ostreicher, your host, still here with you. And again, thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day. And be sure to stay tuned for the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft that starts June 16th with over 50 insiders. Nothing equals the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft. Locked On NBA Big Board Draft experts plus Odyssey insiders. The first pick is June 16th. Search Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and follow now so you don't miss a pick. But let's talk about some picks now. Let's talk about this Los Angeles Rams team that has really put forth this strategy of trading picks for players. And it's not just a fourth round pick here and a fifth round pick here. No, they go all out. They trade their picks for stars. We've seen them trade first rounders for Brandon Cooks, Jalen Ramsey, moving up to select Jared Goff in 2016. Obviously, Matthew Stafford as well. There's a lot of big-time talent, plus not to mention, they've drafted a couple big-time talents, namely Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp, to name the two that were extended for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, Aaron Donald, that was a big one because I know there was the hints of retirement, and is Aaron Donald content with everything now that he's won that Super Bowl? Well, the Rams end up giving Aaron Donald his money for Aaron Donald. They ended up extending him, and that is an extra $40 million raise over the final 3 years of his existing contract. So he's the first non-quarterback to make more than $30 million per season. That's incredible. And I mean, look, he deserves it. He's the best player. He's the best defensive player in the NFL, someone who has earned every single penny of that extension, was key in not only the Rams Super Bowl win, but their entire playoff run. He's already established himself as a future Hall of Famer. And right now he's only 31 years old, just turned 31 about a month ago. So for Aaron Donald, his contract is a 3-year, $95 million contract. Now the potential out there is in 2024. His base salary for 2022 is only $1.5 million. His cap hit, though, is 24. Now it's a lower first-year cap hit for him. $38 million is the cap hit in 2023, $31 million in 2024. But then you have Cooper Kupp, who was also given an extension. And again, Cooper Kupp has turned into one of the best wide receivers, and many argue the best receiver in the NFL. Now, Kupp, again, first year cap hit, a little bit on the lower end for him, only $17 million. And I say only, but only $17 million in his first season. But then it jumps up to 27, then 26, then 26, then 23 over the final 4 years of that deal. So it's a 3-year, $80 million contract that he ended up signing. And it's about $110 million through 2026 for him. So that's the total amount of that deal. And people keep asking, where are the Rams getting this money? How do they keep signing their players for, not just small deals or extensions that are below market value? These are big extensions, big contracts. They signed Matthew Stafford to an extension earlier in the offseason. Obviously, they've brought in guys like Allen Robinson and Bobby Wagner and a couple others. They have fielded themselves a team. And now they did lose a couple guys, right? They traded picks for Von Miller, and he ended up going to Buffalo on a massive deal himself. They've had to release a couple guys also, but there's no doubt that the Rams are in prime position to repeat as Super Bowl champions, that they have built the roster for it again. And now it's just a matter of kind of figuring out how this strategy has worked out for them and just what they're going to have to do moving forward with all these big money contract extensions, because the Rams have not had a first round pick since 2016. Yeah, 2016. That's when they traded up and took Jared Goff. And other than that, they're not going to have a first round pick till next year, 2024. And that's just right now. They could trade that pick and continue with their strategy. But their strategy has been trade high level picks for high level players. And it has gotten them stars. It has netted them extreme talent. And a lot of people, when they traded for Von Miller, was the whole thing. And even before, it was with Matthew Stafford and all the other moves they made, Jalen Ramsey. This is an all-in move where it pretty much was almost Super Bowl or bust for them with some of their pieces. Like, again, Von Miller did leave, so that was their one chance to win with him. And a lot of people thought, well, look, if they lose to Cincinnati, they're not going to have a ton of picks, and they didn't. They're not going to have a lot of picks in 2023 either. Right now, they owe their first-round pick to the Lions. They owe their fourth-rounder to the Patriots, their fifth-rounder to the Browns, and just all this crazy stuff. The sixth-rounder, they have a bunch of sixth-rounders. I think they have 4 sixth-rounders in 2023 and a couple seventh-rounders. So the strategy for them, they're going to have to hit on their late-round picks. That's just what it is, because with these big money contract extensions, what I mentioned, the first-year cap hits are kind of on the low end. They want to make room to fit all these guys in on the same roster together. But then once the cap hits start increasing, like, for example, let's look at Matthew Stafford's contract, because that is one that is an example of this, especially for a quarterback who, obviously, quarterbacks get paid usually the most money once they're eligible or extension eligible. So Stafford's cap hit in 2022 is going to be $13.5 million. Then that jumps to $20 million in 2023. So still not bad at all. But then you're looking at 2024, it jumps from 20 to 49.5 million. 2025, it's another 50 million. And then 2026, that's his age 38 season. It's a $49 million cap hit. Now, there is an out for them in 2026 where they'd only suffered $12 million in dead cap. So if Stafford has regressed at that point, they can get out of it. But that's the thing. It's recycle and then bring in new guys. And for these big money extensions, like for Stafford, for example, if he has fallen off a cliff and he hasn't played well for a couple of years, the Rams can get out of that in 2026 and then reuse that money and only suffer that $12 million dead cap hit while saving upwards of $20 million. So it's that strategy. But for the next couple of seasons, when the Rams don't have high level draft picks, at least for 2023, 2024, they have most of their picks. I think they have all their picks. They only traded a 7th rounder and a pick swap to the Broncos for that Kenny Young deal. They have so many assets, so many high level assets on their team. But Bobby Wagner's cap hit, going back to contracts in 2022, they structured that deal again. So the 2022 cap hit is low at only $2.5 million on the cap hit. Now, then in 2023, you have 12 million, 2024, it's 12 million, but then they have the out in 2025 where they would only have $2 million in dead cap and they'd save around $10 million there. So they're setting it up to be able to slowly bring that money back in and have a couple years of dominance with these high level assets where their cap hits aren't as high. And then once they spike up, it'll be only like a year or two, or, for Aaron Donald or for Cooper Kupp, like you take those cap hits, right? Those players are worth it and they absolutely earn those extensions. But again, it's, can you hit on the late round draft picks? And can you build a roster around these guys? Because free agency, while the Rams did it this year, right? They brought in Allen Robinson and Bobby Wagner and some of those guys I mentioned. They traded for Troy Hill back as well from the Cleveland Browns. So Hill goes from the Rams to the Browns to the Rams. They're going to have to hit, and it's going to be important for them to do so. And not having a first-round pick for 7 years once Matthew Stafford is gone from Los Angeles, once Aaron Donald actually does retire. Cooper Kupp still has a lot of football left in him. But again, Bobby Wagner, right? Some of these older players are going to end up retiring. We don't know when. They could play forever. But at the same time, you have to think about it from the perspective of, well, the Rams are going to have to eventually, with the salary cap, they're going to have to take a hit somewhere, right? The salary cap. I know that the saying is the salary cap isn't real. I do believe it is real, but there are ways around it, right? I think that eventually things will catch up to you in one way or another. But depending on, how savvy a general manager is or how savvy an organization is, they can work around it to make it not as bad as maybe another organization would if they were in the same situation. So the Rams have done a good job. The Rams owners, Stan Kroenke, the Kroenke family, they have a lot of money to spend. They own multiple professional franchises, including the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, obviously the Rams as well. So they're not afraid to spend on the Rams. That moving to Los Angeles, it is a big source of income for them. And they won that Super Bowl. They're trying to repeat. They're not afraid to bring in those high-level players, but now they have to figure out what they can do with, again, it might not be as limited as some people think, where people are saying, oh, well, it's going to catch up to them and they're not going to be able to spend for 3, 4, 5 years. I don't think it's going to get that far. But I do think that the late round draft picks, as I keep coming back to, is very important. Veteran minimum deals potentially. If the free agent market, if these guys now in like June, July, August see the Rams building this roster and they say, hey, I want a chance at a ring, let's go to Los Angeles for a year, they would take most likely potentially a veteran minimum deal. So the Kupp extension, the Aaron Donald extension, two that I think were very, very well deserved for both players. They both earned an extreme amount of money, and they deserve an extreme amount of money. The two of the best at their position. Aaron Donald, I think, again, the best defensive player in the NFL. So congrats to those two. But we'll head into our final break here on Locked On NFL. Still a ton to talk about. Next, we'll dive into the Broncos ownership, their new ownership group, with Sayre Bedinger of Locked On Broncos. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to talk about on Locked On NFL. First, though, I do want to tell you about BetOnline, and BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, and, of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back here. Our final segment of Locked On NFL. Kevin Allstreicher, your host, still here with you again. Thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and follow us in audio format. Now we're going to be talking with Sayre Bedinger of Locked On Broncos about the Broncos' new ownership group and the mood in Denver right now surrounding that. So let's tune into that now. Joining me here now to talk about the Broncos' new ownership is Sayre Bedinger, the host, or one of the hosts of Locked On Broncos. And Sayre, this is a big step for the Denver Broncos here, as they are now bought by a really great ownership group, in my opinion, here, the Walton Penner family ownership group. That's obviously headed out by the Walmart heir, Rob Walton. How you doing and how you feeling about this news?
I'm doing great. It's been a pretty fantastic offseason for the Denver Broncos. Everything just kind of falling into place on paper, right? We get the head coach right away, and I think everybody kind of fell in love with Nathaniel Hackett, just his press conference immediately. Then, of course, you get the trade in early March for Russell Wilson. So you got head coach, you got quarterback, but then you got this ownership thing that's kind of lingering over all of it. It's like, well, who's going to pay Russell Wilson, right? Who's going to be the one to come in and actually give him that contract to keep him with the Denver Broncos for the foreseeable future? And I like the ownership group that's been put together. Like Cody and I on Locked On Broncos, we talked about this many times, just wondering, like, what's it going to be like to have a new owner coming in who's not Pat Bowlen? That's the thing that none of us, my generation of Broncos fans, we have no concept of that. Pat Bowlen's been the owner, or was the owner, until he passed away, for my whole life. So I think that it'll be fascinating to see how somebody else runs the team. And the questions are, what's their passion for the Broncos? Obviously, they're invested heavily at $4.65 billion, the most a sports franchise has ever been purchased for in America. So they're invested financially, but how much do they love the team? That's what I think we're all eager to find out in Broncos country, is how much do they love the team? How, what kind of level of investment are they going to have? Like Pat Bullen was known for going into the locker room and being with the players and being somebody that the players really developed a great relationship with while they were on the team. Is the new ownership group going to kind of be like that? Or are they going to be more hands off and kind of let George Payton and his guys in the front office do their thing? It'll be fascinating to see, but I think everybody's excited now to just kind of mostly just to have it in the past, right? And just to know that the Broncos are as valued as they were at 4.65 billion. I think that excites the fan base as well.
Yeah, we're not talking about millions. We're talking billions of dollars here at 4.65. And that is a massive number. You mentioned it, a record for an American sports franchise. And Sayre, was this a number that you expected? Did you maybe expect the team to go for a little less or even a little more and even break that record? What was your kind of thought process behind that?
I think all along the rumor had been like 4 billion is kind of the benchmark. And so that was where I think that the threshold started. And I didn't necessarily think it was going to get up too much higher than that, but 4.65, I think, is more than anybody assumed it was going to land at. So I think it's up there. Obviously, I mean, $650 million, certainly no, small chunk of change, but it's definitely not too high or too far off. I think the last NFL franchise that sold was the Carolina Panthers at just over two billion. So it's more than double what the Panthers sold for, which I think is about right, or is about kind of where we all thought maybe it could end up being, just based on the way that I guess, is there really a market, quote unquote, to say this? The market has shifted to that point or whatever. But I think that definitely it was a figure that it both kind of surprised everybody, but also like wasn't really out of the realm of possibility. So I think everybody was kind of thinking that it would be around the 4 billion. To see it go up to 4.65, it was kind of cool. Honestly, it's kind of cool to see there was a little bidding war, a second round of bids put in by 4 different ownership groups. So really great to see it come all together.
Yeah, and Sarah, one of the things you mentioned was how the new ownership group will, run this team and kind of be hands-on with them. And that's very interesting to me because I think it's one of the most interesting points of this whole thing. It's just how will things be run under new ownership. So, Sarah, what would you like to see personally in terms of how new ownership does their thing?
Well, I'd like to see for sure just this new ownership group really put their trust in general manager George Payton first and foremost, just to know that they came into this with a general manager already in place that just traded for Russell Wilson. You just had a massive offseason in terms of bringing in other pieces like Randy Gregory and DJ Jones, and having another solid draft. And last year winning the award for the best draft, which it's too early to tell that anyway, but I think the Broncos did have a really good draft last year. So you got a lot of reasons to be confident in George Payton. And I think what everyone's afraid of is kind of a middling owner like Jerry Jones with the Dallas Cowboys, who comes in, he's like, I'm going to be the general manager. And I don't really think anyone wants that in Broncos country. I think we all want somebody like, Kroenke with the Rams, who's like, hey, you just tell me who you're keeping around. I'm going to, write my name on the check and you give the check to that player. I think you want to see the Broncos be aggressive. You want to see this new just overflowing river of cash actually help the team, because that's something that's been a thing with Broncos country in recent years. It's, well, the team, they have a lot of cap space, but they don't have a ton of cash on hand to be able to make these big signings. And now that's something that I think we don't necessarily have to worry about. I mean, everybody's talking about how the salary cap is not real for teams like the Los Angeles Rams and teams that are making all these big moves, but in reality, they're just able to manipulate because they have so much cash on hand. They're able to push the numbers around. So seeing an owner be willing to do whatever it takes to win, I think that's really the number one thing that we want to see is, hey, I'm going to equip the football people to do what they do, and I'm going to give them whatever assets they need to be able to do it.
Yeah, and speaking of Peyton's, let's move on to Peyton Manning. As the former Broncos quarterback, there have been some potential rumors and rumblings that he could have potentially an advisory role, some ownership stake within this Denver Broncos team. Is that something you'd like to see happen?
I think it's something I'd like to see happen, and I think everybody in Broncos country really wants to see it happen. It's something that's been rumored for a while. Pretty much every vacancy, other than being the quarterback, which even that has been talked about among Broncos fans, but pretty much every vacancy over the last 6 years since Peyton retired, everybody's wanting Peyton Manning to be that guy to come in. You want him to be the head coach. They want him to be the offensive coordinator. They want him to be the general manager. And I think ownership is really what Peyton Manning has been readying himself for. And not necessarily he's not going to be the top guy, but I think just having stake in the team. He lives in Denver. He stayed in Denver after he retired, so that's his home. He's always around the Broncos facility. He's constantly doing stuff with the team anyway. It just makes sense for him. He's a champion in the Denver community at this point. And I think it just makes a ton of sense for him to be able to be part of that side of the business and have a stake in ownership. Believe it or not, it's crazy to think about. Peyton Manning has nowhere near enough money to buy an NFL franchise. So this is the clearest path for him to get in with a franchise that he absolutely loves. I know that's probably hard for a lot of Colts fans to hear, but I think Peyton Manning's post-playing trajectory, the career arc that he's on after his playing days, kind of everything that Indianapolis Colts fans probably dreamed, right? He's made his residence in Denver. He's now going to potentially be part owner of the Denver Broncos. It's really cool to see because Peyton has such a great influence over the team still. I mean, he's come in and he's done film stuff with Russell Wilson. He talks to all the players. He does all this different stuff for the team. It would be great to have him be an official part of what they're doing going forward.
Yeah, and with me being a Denver Nuggets guy, I know Peyton Manning has certainly rooted himself in the Denver community and has really embraced that community. So to hear him potentially be in this advisory role or have some ownership stake, it doesn't necessarily shock me because of just how much he loves the Denver community. But Sayre, it seems like there is a lot of excitement surrounding Broncos country right now, and especially with the moves that they've made. And I've asked a lot of other hosts around the network about how they've felt about the schedules that their teams have gotten throughout the course of the 2022 offseason here. Now we know not just who they will play, but when and where and all the travel miles. How do you feel the Broncos got their schedule and just how it went in terms of home games, away games, and even travel?
I think it's pretty good. It's going to be, pretty favorable to start off. They play the Jets and the Texans and a couple of other teams early on. That's, they're all NFL teams, so they all have NFL players, and you never know what could happen on a given Sunday. But just on paper, the early part of the schedule looks pretty favorable to the Broncos. And then right in the middle of the season, they take a trip to London to play the Jaguars, which I think is going to be awesome. The Broncos haven't been over in London or done any of the international games like that for a while. So it'll be great to have them back in that circuit. And they come back from that. They got their bye week, and the second half of the schedule is absolutely brutal, including a road trip to play against your Ravens, which I mean, the Baltimore Ravens, they've got one of the best home field advantages in football. I think like third or fourth best home record over the last 20 years, something like that. So that's part of just an intense second half of the season for the Broncos, including two matchups against the Kansas City Chiefs in a 4-week period. And you've obviously got the gauntlet that is the AFC West in general, and they play up the majority of their AFC West games the second half. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like you better get off to a hot start and then, just really galvanize as the season goes along. I think the schedule's built for them to be able to do that. Just like 2012, Peyton Manning joined the team his first year. They kind of got off to a rough start, but the fifth game into the season, they started to really gel, and I think they went on an 11-game winning streak or something like that. And of course, that's another callback to a great Baltimore Ravens season for you, the 2012 season. But it was a great thing to see for the Denver Broncos. They became really cohesive as the season went along. So if they can do that, it'll be perfect because the second half of their schedule is absolutely brutal.
Yeah, and I keep telling people the AFC West, in my opinion, I think is going to be one of the best, if not the best division in football this year. And it seemed like the whole offseason, every team was going, I'm going to one-up you, and then no, well, I'm going to one-up you, and then it just kept going and kept going. So I seriously think each team in that division positioned themselves to win it, and I'm really excited to see how it all turns out. But Sayre, thanks so much for joining me here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, seems like lots of excitement around Broncos country right now. Again, that AFC West division, I keep coming back to it. One of the best in football next year, my prediction. I think it'll be right up there with the NFC West, the AFC North, etc. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On NFL. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to get back tomorrow. I'll be here with your Tuesday host, so be sure to stay tuned for that, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.